So, Pastor Eleanor kind of asked us to get together and share our story of Sabbathing. That's something that we decided to do as a family and tried to do it last year in 2022 as the first year. So we'll share kind of our ups and downs. I know you guys are doing the challenge. How many of you are doing the challenge right now and you feel like you're crushing it and there's not much else you think you can do to improve? Raise your hand if that's you.
Oh, right here.
All right.
She raised her hand.
We got one. How many of you are doing it and you're kind of finding like, this is harder than maybe I thought it would be? Okay. Anybody raise your hands? How many of you have just chosen not to do it yet? Be honest.
Come on, be honest.
Love it. This is something that we'll do. And this is actually, when Pastor Eleanor asked us to speak on this, it kind of challenged me a little bit. I'm very much like Pastor Eleanor when I speak. I love exegetical sermons. I love coming with the 3-point, Greek and Hebrew and that kind of stuff, which is awesome. And sometimes when people would preach and only share their story, I'm like, all you did was just share your story. But when Pastor Eleanor asked me to speak, I was like, well, what pastor should I preach out of? She's like, just tell your story. So it's going to be a little bit challenging for me, more so in this one. But there's power in our stories. At the end of times, the way that the enemy will be defeated, it says, by the blood of the Lamb, by Jesus Christ's blood, and the word of our testimony. Our life and how we live it, and when we speak that, has power. You want to start us off?
So this is the word of our testimony.
There you
Here we go. Okay, cool. So we're going to, just talk about Sabbath this morning. To start our story off, before 2021, like pre-2021, we had heard many, many times about how we should be taking a Sabbath. And we were like, cool, like that sounds great for you all. Did you hear we have 4 kids? Also, they're wild. Also, we've got sports. Also, John, so we are full-time pastors. He also has a full-time job besides full-time pastoring. And I work as a part-time substitute teacher. So we were like, Sabbath, like when are we going to even carve that in? And do you want to share a little bit of your heart?
Yeah, well, like I always, at every church that I've always been at, I've always heard pastors talk about the importance of Sabbath. And I'll be completely honest, I always left that time just feeling with a bad attitude because the attitude was one is like, hey, it's easy for you to say full-time pastor. You could just take a day off in the middle of the week when you want. Those of us who have regular jobs can't do that. Right? And even today, I have a normal Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 job. Plus I work on Sundays as a pastor. It's not something that's sustainable. So it was something that I just kind of felt like when people would say we're out of touch. And I was like, okay, well, that's great for you, but it's not something that I can really practice. And I kind of almost viewed it as this is something that is good for people in the ministry who are able to do it. But for regular folk like me, it's not something that could be a part of my rhythm because it logistically won't work.
Right. So we, summer 2021, so this was just like a year and a half ago, we were at family camp, which is for pastors and their kids. And we were up there with our kids and we were up there with a bunch of pastors and we're in this big old room with like 100 other pastors. And somebody gets up on the stage and starts talking about Sabbath. And we both kind of roll our eyes and go like, okay, that sounds good again. For you. Right. And they mentioned the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which I have heard is on your book list back there. Yeah. So everybody in the room, when they mentioned The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, they all went, And I looked at John and I was like, have you read that? And he was like, no. And I was like, I haven't either. And I felt like we were on the outside looking in because everybody was like, such a good book. And we were like, okay, like maybe. And it kind of kept coming up in conversation. So I finally downloaded it on Audible because who has time to read? I did not have time to read. I was too hurried, obviously. So I downloaded it on Audible and I read it through the fall, specifically during soccer season. I remember like walking the track and listening to The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which was so ironic because I was like hurrying around, listening to this book, listening to it probably on like 1.8 speed.
Yeah.
And going to Costco and running my errands while this is like playing in my ears. And I kept going like, wow, like this is really practical. Like, this is really practical advice. So for those of you who actually listen to like audiobooks, if that's easier for you, he reads his own book, which for me, I always love because it gives a different nuance to it. So highly recommend the audio version or the book, either way, whatever your preference is. But I recommend that one for just learning about Sabbath because it's super practical. So once I finished it, I was like, we've got to figure out a way to get this into our lives. And so I very nicely asked John / forced him to read the book, which was a big challenge because he normally does. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But he actually read it that winter. And then we decided.
Definitely on 2 times speed.
2 times speed, for sure, for you. And then we started that winter, or actually in 2022, the very first Sunday of 2022. So now you guys are starting the very first Sunday of 2023. So we're like a whole year ahead of you.
This is what you can look like in a year.
So we started the first Saturday of 2022, and we just got going with it. Do you want to add anything there?
Yeah. So what we decided to do is that we started our Sabbath Friday night when the sun went down. And then that Friday night, we would just have kind of as a family time, and then we would go all the way through the night until Saturday night at sundown. So it was 24 hours, but it kind of broke up the days a little bit. So that way, if we had to do something on Saturday, it would allow us some time, and then Friday became our family time. And it was something that we decided from the very beginning that we were just going to kind of force to do. And so what were a couple of our initial rules that we had?
So some of our tradition with that is like on Friday night when it started, we would light a candle. And it's this candle, we got a special candle because you can't have a regular candle. And not for Sabbath. So we got this candle that I ordered them online, and they actually drip down wax. And I put it in the top of like an old wine bottle, and it drips down wax over. So we can see all of these Sabbaths that we have are kind of dripped over this wine bottle. And it's something special because the kids love watching it too. So if you've got kids in the room, they just love watching this wax like coming down and dripping, and it's all different colors. It's like rainbow wax. It's really cool. So that's one of our traditions. Our initial ground rules are we don't do technology, so we put phones away. We don't watch TV. We don't play video games, all of that kind of stuff. Now, for us, that's very restful. Everyone's Sabbath is going to look a little bit different, and I do know pastors who let their kids, or just friends who let their kids play video games on Sabbath. I don't feel like my kids ever come back from playing a video game and are rested and feel better. So I was like, this is not happening. They're horrible people when they're done playing video games because they're overstimulated and they're like, ah! So I was like, no video games. We're just going to go cold turkey on this. And our kids, I will tell you, threw a fit for the first couple of weeks. But by about the 3rd or 4th week, they started to feel rested. And they also started to look at us and go, oh my gosh, you're available to me. Like, because our phones were down. So when they were like, let's play a game or let's go to the park, instead of me being like, yeah, a few minutes, I got to finish this email, got to finish this text, I was readily available. And they loved that part of it. And I think that's what kind of started changing their hearts toward this whole idea.
And we found ourselves saying yes. As a parent, you say no a lot, right? And a lot of times it's like you'll get up and it'll be like 8 o'clock in the morning and a kid will be like, can we play Monopoly? And you're like, no, not going to play Monopoly at 8 o'clock in the morning. But when it's our Sabbath and there's nothing else to do, we would say, yes, well, let's play Monopoly. And they'd be like, really? And they realized that because we had that margin, that they realized, like, wow, this is something that we have mom and dad's attention, and it was something that was so great. And there was the adjustment period. Like I said, the people who are doing it and don't feel like you're crushing it, it was tough. Our kids are old enough at the age where they can get up, make breakfast, and turn on a show all without waking mom and dad. So Saturdays were our sleep-in days. Well, very quickly, we realized that if they're not preoccupied watching a show, all they do is just fight with each other. So our sleeping in on Sabbath went away immediately to where we would have to get up with them at 7. And it was really difficult for us, and that was an adjustment period. But we found that as the kids got more and more used to it, they're back now where they get up They eat breakfast and they will play together, not on technology, and still let us sleep in. They have eventually learned how to do that. And we would do other rhythms. The candle was one. We would bake cookies every single time. During the summertime, I love making salsas. And so during the summertime, every Saturday, I would make salsas. And we would just have salsas throughout the week. It was just, we would create these rhythms. And it's interesting that kids and families, there's something about having the rhythm that they really like. There's something about just having something that you do every single time together that they really hold on to. And then they're like, we forgot to light the candle. Can we go light the candle? And who lit a candle became like the biggest honor of the day. And you wouldn't really think about it, but it was just different things that we would do. So something as you're creating your own story with your family or your people, create a rhythm, something that is fun that you guys like.
Yeah. Yeah, we would make cookies. They're just chocolate chip cookies, but our kids started calling them Shabbat cookies.
Shabbat shalom, yeah, Shabbat
And
cookies.
so they would go to school and be like, my mom made me some Shabbat cookies. And their teacher would be like,
that's not a thing. I don't know what that is. But
what does that mean? But it's also a great way for us to talk to then their friends and teachers about what we do and how we practice rest. And I mean, it's so cool because a lot of them have gone like, I need to do that. Mm-hmm. That sounds amazing. So it's been fun to be able to kind of share our story that way. We also will typically do like kind of a fun meal somewhere in there. And I mean, really what we do is like, I'll go to Costco on Friday, which is nuts, but it's like, I'm going to go to Costco at the end of a workday on Friday so that I can just get it done and rest. But I go there and I get a couple chickens, they're roast chickens.
Amazing.
And then John makes some mashed potatoes and some peas. And so we have like a nice family dinner to like sit down to, but it's still easy because it's, Costco's doing the chickens and we use instant mashed potatoes. So let's be real. We're not doing the whole other thing, but, we make like a easy but kind of fancier dinner that night and just get to sit down and talk with each other.
And we also prepare something else with Sabbathing. A lot of times, I think you got to change the mindset of like, oh, it's a 24-hour thing. It's really not. In order to be successful, you have to think outside of that 24 hours. Yeah. So for us, that meant preparing for it. Mm-hmm. So Friday after work, I would go with the kids and we would clean the house as much as possible. We would go and just get it because who wants to rest and spend time with the Lord in an empty house with laundry and with junk all over and a dirty kitchen? Mm-hmm. So I would do that. Gina would go to the store. And it was just that hustle and bustle, and it was really hard at first to be like, man, I'm tired, I just want to rest. But we found that after doing that for a while, it was like a race to rest, and it was kind of weird, almost counterintuitive. But it was like, I can't wait until I can stop doing this. Let's hurry up and finish. And it was like once, and then we have an Alexa, and it would at sundown it would play automatically a song, Shabbat Shalom, and just a lady who would sing something. And once that went off, it meant we're done. Mm-hmm. Wherever we're at, we have to stop. And we would you also find you have to make margin throughout the rest of the week. So things like laundry was not restful for us. So we'd have to do other things like laundry throughout the week. So if you're going to be successful at it, you have to make sure that some of the things that you would do automatically, you have to do the rest of the week. It takes a little bit of extra time up front, and it almost is like you feel busier. But when you finally get that rest because you've done everything, it's just like a big just drink of water after you're just parched. And so definitely, we have to expand what that is, and it's something that you prepare for. And to be successful in it, I think the way that kind of we started at first was like, we won't just put anything on the calendar during this 24 hours of time.
Yeah, we'll just leave the calendar blank.
We'll leave it blank. But the problem is when you leave the calendar blank, things just find their way on there. So if you have a calendar, you need to block it out. You need to block out and say, this is our Sabbath time. Friday night to Saturday night, that is on the calendar where it's blocked. You need to actually protect that time as opposed to just not scheduling. And there's a huge difference to your mindset. Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of our frustrations and struggles?
Oh, do
Sabbathing?
I? Ooh, challenges, things we fought about.
Oh, yeah.
One of the biggest things that we fought about was whether or not to spend money on the Sabbath. And I was very staunchly in the we're not going to spend money category. And I was like, no, like we're just going to take one day and like very like, we're not doing that. We're not going anywhere. We're just going to stay home and do nothing. And John was of the like, seriously, we're at the park and the ice cream truck rolls up and you're not going to buy our kids ice cream because it's Sabbath? Like, how does that feel to them? No, you guys, we can't because it's Sabbath. So, anyway, it was kind of funny. We did that for a few months. John allowed me to dig my heels in very graciously. You were so sweet about it. But I talked to a couple of friends of mine who are also in ministry, and I was like, yeah, this whole like not spending money thing. And they were like, hold on, what? And I was like, we're not spending money because it's Sabbath. And they were like, why? And so they really challenged me on it. And I have walked that back, but it's something that we had to talk about. And the question is, what are you spending money on? So am I going to the grocery store and spending money? Heck no. I'm not going to the grocery store because I'm not doing my grocery run. That's something I should have done Sunday through Friday. But on Saturdays, can we spend money at the ice cream truck? Yes. Can we spend money on going out and doing something fun as a family? Absolutely. As long as it's restful or recharges our souls or brings us joy. And then the other one was restaurants. John was like, we should go out to a restaurant. We should go do something fun. And I'd be like, no. And I'm like a fun killer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The Lord is checking my heart right now. I feel it. No, but I changed. I was able to kind of just pray through that and go like, God, and one of the reasons why is because in the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, John Mark Comer and his family, they do not spend money on the Sabbath, and that works for them. For our family and in our context, for us, it didn't work. It does feel great to go out and do something fun as a family and to spend money on that and to, really give towards that. So we're happy to do that now.
Yeah, that was one. Another thing is is the Sabbath just Erickson time? Is this time where we just spend with our family? What about having friends over? Is that something that we could do? Is that allowed? And so it's kind of like, the first time we're like, I don't really know. And this is also in the not spending money time. And if you're going to have friends over, you got to feed them. Or if they have kids, you got to get more Capri Suns or whatever else. So we would ask our friends like, hey, we can't go spend money. Can you go to the store?
Before you come over to our house,
come over and
can
get
you
X
go
and X
buy
and
like
X?
some carne asada, please?
Yeah. And so, and we would find that we would do that. And we found that and that's also something that we kind of had to work through. There are certain people, I'm sure that all of you have those certain people in your life. When you spend time with them, it feels very restful. It feels very fulfilling. And there's also people whom you love that after you're done hanging out with them, you're like, I'm good for a little bit.
Feel a little drained.
I'm good. So I would definitely be strategic about, hey, who are the people? A couple times we would just have lots of friends over, and we love all of our friends and would love to do that. But we've realized we're not going to do that on our Sabbath. We may do just a couple of them. Or it's like, can our kids go to someone else's house and play? Well, I don't know. But we allowed that. And again, so it was, again, working on it and checking to see what was there. Another thing for me, for instance, is this idea of like rest, right? And I'm someone who's got a lot of energy. And so I would try to not do anything. But I found myself having lots of angst, especially after I drink some coffee. I love a good pot of French press coffee that I just drink myself. And I just found myself with all this angst. I remember one time, a couple of months in, there's just this big, massive wood pile in my backyard. I decided I'm just going to chop this wood. There's something manly and great about chopping wood. So I put on worship music in my AirPods and just chopped wood for an hour. And it was so fulfilling. It was so great. And I found myself that once I expend that energy sometime, especially in the beginning of the Sabbath, it calms me down for the rest of the time. And so even now, like a lot of people started going back to the gym in the past couple of weeks, yesterday on our Sabbath, I went to the gym in the morning. I don't go super early, but early enough to where I can sleep in a little bit and go to the gym. I find that I'm so much more at peace. My soul is so much more restful having that hour of intensity. Something that I heard on one of the sermons that maybe I rolled my eyes at years ago was a sermon by Rick Warren. He gave a sermon on Sabbathing. And something that he said that was really good wisdom. He says that if you spend your week working in your body, on your Sabbath, you need to get into your mind. You need to sit, relax, don't if you do hard construction labor, don't go out and do a lot of projects, but sit down and read or utilize your mind. But if you spend the week of your time in your mind, on your Sabbath, get into your body. You kind of do the opposite. I work a desk job Monday through Friday. So for me, on our Sabbath, getting into my body in some way is really helpful for me. And it allows me to experience the Lord differently. But again, it's something that, may be different for you. And how you go.
Yeah, it brings a lot of life. We do a lot of walks too. Like we'll go to the dog park. We have a dog, so we'll go to the Stillicum dog park because it's the best one, and we'll let our kids romp around and the dog romp around, and it brings a lot of life and joy to everybody too, to just get outside and be in nature and talk about the things God made and kind of reflect on some of that too. Something that was also hard for us was soccer. So kids sports, our kids, 3 of our kids do soccer, all separate teams. I coached one of their teams this year, and my oldest son assistant coached it with me. So we had 3 different soccer games to go to every Saturday in the fall. And I will tell you, we did not Sabbath well. We were still trying to work that out by the time soccer season ended. Like, how do we do this well?
We never figured out how to do it well in that time. Yeah. We got really good after about 9 months of doing it, protecting that time, getting rest. And then soccer season comes, explodes it. We got better at it in those 2 or 3 months. We didn't figure it out. So we're also now developing strategies of how the heck we need to do this next year. So again, like I said, most people, when it was like, how many of you are doing it and you find you are struggling, you will find those seasons of the year where you will struggle more. That's a perfectly normal thing to do. This is not something that is intuitive. It's so crazy to me. You would think that, hey, just sit down and relax. Should be super easy. It's not. It's not for our culture. There's a reason it's in the Old Testament so many times. It's one of the 10 commandments because this is so counterintuitive to ourselves. It's hard. Sabbathing is something that you have to learn how to do. It's not just something you flip a switch. Same thing with like reading the Bible. A lot of times as a pastor, I'll sit down with somebody who has never read the Bible. I'll usually start with 1 John. It's a great place to start. Those first couple of months, it takes us a couple of months to get through one book of the Bible. It's hard. It's to get into that practice, to get into journaling and getting something out of it. You do that for a year or two, you get a lot better. It's the same thing with Sabbath. And I'm just saying, hold on to it. You may feel like, and sometimes you'll have weekends where like we failed. We had an entire 2.5 months where we didn't fail. I'd give us a C- of D+ of Sabbathing during that time. But we just never were able to figure it out. I think probably the biggest thing though that I learned during that soccer season is that really I think Sabbath is more of a mindset that you have. We would do our Fridays just fine, but then Saturday morning, it was like, you ever get 4 kids out in a car, 2 different places. Sometimes we'd have to drop a kid off to go to a third game all at the same time. But there was just, you run around like crazy. And, the kids are fighting with each other. I'm like the perfect parent until one of them does something wrong. And then I turn
one of them can't find their cleats.
Extra.
Oh my gosh.
And then I turn extra, and then I start getting frustrated, and I start going. And something that we would do during that time is that we'd lean over when one of the 2 of us, usually me, were being extra, and we would just sit and we would just say, hey, Shabbat Shalom. And it was difficult at first to hear that because I get it. That's
exactly what you would do. I get it.
I get it. Not my fault. But what's interesting with that, there's a way that you can have some of those things where you're angsty, where the energy that you're putting off is just crazy, and there's a way that you can do it much more peaceful. And I was like, and we would learn and say, you know what? We can be 2.5 minutes later to this practice, and I can have a completely different attitude going into it. And so I would even say, as you go through Sabbath, it's the mindset. Have a code word. Ours was Shabbat Shalom. Ours was that thing of like, hey, take a moment and get peace. The term shalom It means peace in Hebrew. But it doesn't just mean the absence of conflict. It doesn't just mean things quiet. It means wholeness. It means being complete. One of the first times shalom is in the Old Testament was when Joshua was building an altar. And the directions were, you need to find shalom stones to build the altar. And you're like, shalom, how could stones be peaceful? And what was meant was it means complete stones, whole, that have not been broken. So shalom, or peace, really means this sense of wholeness. In our house, there are times where it's quiet, but that doesn't necessarily mean
Not often.
Not often. Usually when my kids are gone. Yeah. But if you say, what does shalom look like in our house? It's when we're all sitting together playing a game together. We played a game together last night, a new game that one of our kids got for her birthday. That's shalom. It was a little crazy. People are laughing. We're having a good time.
Some tears.
We're spilling water all over cards, but that is what wholeness and shalom is. And that's really what you try to get through Sabbath.
Yeah. Just like John said, it's not the absence of our kids running around making noise. It's the fullness of inviting the Lord's presence into that and really into our home and being intentional about it. Stuff we've changed. Ooh, let's talk about this. One thing that we have added to our Sabbath practice is usually on Saturday nights, we will, after dinner, turn on the TV and we will watch The Chosen together. And I don't know if any of you have seen it or heard of it. It is literally the best story of Jesus' life, like, on the planet. Okay, I'm going to tell you this. I detest most Christian programs. I think they're lame. I think the actors are cheesy. I think the storyline's horrible. Blech. I don't want to watch Christian TV. But somebody was like, no, you just have to watch it. Just trust me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to watch The Chosen. I'm going to try it out. And you guys, it is so well done. The actors are phenomenal. It is so good. It's such good TV. You can find it on Amazon Prime for free, or they have an app. But it's just literally watching the Bible with skin on. Like, it's watching the stories and watching Jesus and watching how it could have played out. And like, our kids get sucked into it. They absolutely love it. I will give you this disclaimer. The first episode of the first season has Mary with demon possession. So maybe skip that one if you have young children. Our kids tried to watch that one and they were like, turn this off, we can't do it. So we skipped to the second episode and it was fine. We didn't really miss a whole lot. So we made it through that. But that's one thing that we have added to our routine that has added so much, because our kids, what they're learning about in Sunday school or what they're reading about in their little kid Bibles or their action Bible, they're going like, oh, I know this story. And then they're watching it. And honestly, like, I've cried during this series. It's been so good. Like, it's shockingly good.
Yeah. I think that's important too. Anytime, for our church, we're currently fasting. We take 21 days of prayer and fasting together. And we always encourage people when they're fasting to take things away, but you also want to add a practice in. Mm-hmm. And as a part of Sabbath too, you definitely need to add things to your life. I think that you should try to add things that allow you to abide with Jesus, to find yourself in connection with him, whatever that is. And you have permission to do things that maybe are a bit weird, but after you do them, it connects you to the Lord. Like, I'll be honest with you. I have a hard time. I read the Bible very normally as a part of my practice. Me reading the Bible, I've struggled with it ever since Bible college and long before. I don't really have a heart connection when I read God's word. It goes in my mind. I think about it. I was a Greek and Hebrew student. I think about, that verse. I've struggled with this for so hard. Like, I want to engage my heart. I can't.
Because you're so intellectual.
Because my brain is so big.
Seriously, it is. Not a lie.
I do have a big head. But what I found, for me, one of the best ways for me to sit and to abide is to sit across with somebody else and to just talk about what the Lord is doing. Like, even sitting here before, talking with Trey or some of the other people around us about what God's doing, I feel a connection to God and the Holy Spirit stronger than any time else. So for me, abiding looks like sitting across with somebody, having coffee or having lunch, or just sitting around and just talking about what God's doing in your life, I feel a connection to the Holy Spirit stronger than any time else. And it's hard sometimes when you're like, well, I didn't read the Bible today, but I met with these other people. Is that okay? Does that count as abiding with Christ? Does that count? And it does count. So I would say, whatever it is that you find yourself in connection, that you connect with God in, even if it's a little weird, even if it's something you're kind of like, does this count as spending time with the Lord? It absolutely does. Find whatever that is and add that practice in, because the important part is to find connection with the Holy Spirit there. And like with anything, you're gonna be bad at it at first. You're gonna have moments in the first couple of months. It's like, well, I had a couple hours here, maybe a moment there. But as you continue with it, like any other practice, any other spiritual discipline, as you continue to do it, you get better at it. Yeah. And there are times that we need to start over. I think is Paul. I don't think Paul's in here. Oh, he is there. He just was asleep in the back. No, I was kidding. I don't know you very well, but I'm going to use you as an example. So I apologize, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. But something you did during worship, an amazing time of worship that you had. I really just felt the Lord's presence. And there was that one song, the very last song, where you started in the wrong key. And you started, and it only got about 2 seconds in, and you stopped, said, hey, I'm really sorry, I got the wrong key, and you started again. By you doing that at the very beginning, it didn't take away from the Holy Spirit at all for the rest of the song. It was just as powerful by you doing that. So even though I know as a musician, it's like, that's really hard, but I can let you know, for me sitting there, it didn't affect it at all. But what it did, you had the wisdom, because if you stayed in that key the rest of the song, you would have been messed up, we would have felt it, and we would have been messed up. And the wisdom that you had just to take, you know what? We're going to start this over again. Sometimes when you Sabbath, you will get halfway in and you just need a reset. Mm-hmm. And you just need to say, guys, we just need to start over. Mm-hmm. We are in the wrong key. I've been in a mood, kids have been, turns to each other, whatever it is. And just to take a moment and say, we're starting over again. Mm-hmm. And instead of a 24-hour Sabbath, we're having a 12-hour Sabbath because we're starting again. And don't be afraid to do that, just to reset yourself and to have the wisdom, like my friend Paul, to just be able to start over again. It's something that, again, I love the verse in Mark where Jesus says that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. This was meant for us. If you ask yourself, am I allowed to do this? Is this okay? Mm-hmm. The question that we would always ask is what we're about to do, is it a net benefit or net deficit for our soul? If it's a net benefit, we would do it, even if we're not sure if that's allowed or not. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we'd think that would be a net benefit, and we'd say, yep, nope, that was a deficit. We will not do that again. Mm-hmm. And then we would fix it again. Mm-hmm. I think that's the standard for anything. Is this something that benefits my soul? In the Old Testament, it was easy. Yeah. You had a bunch of rules you follow the rules, it's great. You color within the lines, and you're doing it. It's way harder now because you have to examine your soul, and you have to examine your heart. And a lot of times you think you're doing well and you're crushing it. Only to a month later, you're like, no, I haven't been doing that at all right. Mm-hmm. It's hard to go back, but it's so fulfilling once you're able to get this practice in.
Yeah, so one of the things that John Mark Comer talks about in his book, in the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, he talks about a mountain climbing journey with a bunch of Americans, and they're over in like Mount Everest, and it's a bunch of American people on their American schedule with their American flight tickets back, and you got to get there on time, and you got to follow the schedule, and we got to get there. Well, they've also got their Sherpa guides with them who do not follow our same system of rules and laws. And so they're out there hiking, and they're hiking for a couple of days, and they set up camp to sleep overnight, and in the morning they all get up and they go, all right, time to leave, let's go. And the Sherpas don't move. And they're like, you guys, we got to go. It's on our schedule. We got to get to the next place. The Sherpas say, no, we're not moving. So they start offering them money. They start offering them their technology, their watches, their cool sleeping bags that they got from REI or whatever. And the Sherpas are like, we will not move for any amount of money. And they're like, what is going on? And they finally talked with them and figured out what was happening. And the Sherpas said, we will not move from this spot until our spirits catch up with our bodies. And I love that idea for Sabbath. Has your soul, has your spirit caught up with your body? If the answer is no, rework it for next week. Try something different. So for us, like that's the question we're constantly asking. Is this going to cause my spirit to catch up with my body? Because I think for us, we're running 100 miles per hour some weeks. We're going from the thing to the thing to the thing. I worked 4 days this past week, which was a lot for me because I'm just substitute teaching. And then we had stuff every single night. And I kept thinking during the week, I kept going like, I cannot wait. We're going to get to Sabbath. Sabbath is going to help me catch up. And that's what I needed. And so yesterday when we had our Sabbath, like it was intentional. We did things purposefully to just rest and to allow our spirits to catch back up. So it was just a sweet time of allowing that to happen.
Yeah, you definitely outrun your soul a lot, right? You do that. But I would also say as you continue to do it, you get better at catching up quicker.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, so as you begin to do that, it used to be for me, it's like you're not really feeling the effects of Sabbath until midday. Again, we are Friday night to Saturday night, midday Saturday. Mm-hmm. But then as we began to do it more and that practice, I've been able to kind of slough off some of that angst and some of that stuff to where I was able that Friday night just to say, all right, and be able to allow myself there. I don't know. It's the same thing with me. Anytime I go to even a church service, that first worship song, I'm really not in it. I'll be honest. Paul, it was great. It was great. You crushed it. I was in it when you did. I'm not in it because my soul, I'm still thinking about like that getting there. I'm not really in it yet. I need that time to catch up. It's the same thing with Sabbathing too. You need that time to catch up, and sometimes, but it's something that you will get better at. And the only way to get better at it is to do it. And so many times for us, when we've tried this in the past, we've been married years, 16 years. So many times we've tried it in the past and we gave up too quick because we're like, we're horrible at this. This is dumb. Let's move on. But it took an entire year for us to do it. And we're still not great. We're good.
We're pretty good.
We're good.
We're getting there.
But like I said, we had those seasons where we're like, we're not doing it well right now. Mm-hmm. And we wish we had a better answer for it, and we don't. And it's okay to say some of that.
Yeah, and to stumble your way through it, I think. It's okay to do that. Some pro tips from John and Gina's house. One thing is your Sabbath won't look like our Sabbath. It's not. Your guidelines are going to be a little different than ours, and that's okay. So you need to Sabbath how you need to Sabbath and how you feel rested. But the point is to do it and to start it.
Yeah, there's somebody at our church. We gave the similar talk to our church New Year's Day, where we did kind of a similar thing. And one of the people at our church decided that they would start Sabbathing, but they did 12 hours on Saturday morning and then stopped in the afternoon and paused it. And then they did Sunday afternoon after church for the rest of the time. So they split it up over 2 days because they just said, you know, they're like, we would do it all day Sunday, but they're very involved. They're there every single, on the worship team, doing other stuff at church, like a lot of you all who are doing here. So like we can't fully rest. So they split it up over 2 days. And I talked to them last night, and just that little bit of moving that and being intentional for half the day on Saturday, half the day on Sunday has really helped them in the last couple of weeks. So it will look different, and embrace the weird and embrace the uncomfortable. Can we do this? Like net benefit, net deficit. Net benefit, we're going to try it.
Yeah. Another thing I encourage is, again, like John said, establishing some rhythm. So we light a candle. That candle burns, and it's a reminder every time we walk past it. This is what we're doing right now. Another thing is our cookies or having a nice dinner. For me, Sabbath happens when I put on my orange velour sweatsuit. Oh my gosh. It's so soft, and my body just immediately goes, you almost have that little exhale. And like that for me is like a reminder all day when I'm walking around in that sweatsuit, like, oh, it's Sabbath, we're feeling good.
She wore it when we did our thing.
Our message at church.
So if you want to know what it looks like, find our Facebook page, and it's on there. You can see exactly what you look like.
So maybe get yourself something soft and cozy just to remind you. Have a Sabbath blanket or something. You guys, there's so many options out there. Sabbath slippers, I don't know. But just another reminder of like, this is what we're doing. And having those visual and tactile reminders, like it's such a good thing. Another thing we do is we play we'll play like more like relaxing music on Sabbath. So we'll put on like a nice Christian hymn, like easy listening guitar music or whatever throughout the house sometimes. And that's a good cue to our kids and ourselves. You have any pro tips?
No, I think you got it. I think the thing is just finding those things, whatever it is that you really like doing, and whatever, you know what I mean, and creating the rhythm is important. It's weird, like that orange velour jumpsuit that you wear. And that's the thing that's amazing. When you look at the Old Testament and you look at the way that God interacted with his people, they would have tassels on their robes. He would ask you to do stuff. Jesus, when he asked us, he could have said, hey, once a week or every once in a while, remember my crucifixion. Yeah, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he's like, take communion. Do something physical, and just something as normal as a crack. Even to this day, if I drink grape juice just by itself, to me it's communion. It is what it is. There's something about just doing the practice physically that makes something come alive. And find that for your Sabbath. Maybe it's that certain, like I said, sweatshirt you wear, that comfortable blanket that you wear. We have an actual fireplace, so I'll usually build a fire. It's 82 degrees out, and I build a fire, and still, just because it's something that just reminds us of that chance to sit down and rest. Find whatever that is that you normally would have to say no to. You're like, I can't do that. That's absurd. Like, I would never create a fire when it's 80 degrees out inside. But just do it, and you find yourself. It's that Pavlovian response of I can take a moment and just rest.
Yeah. You want to wrap us up?
Yeah. I think that's about it.
That's about it for me. I went through all my notes.
That's it. So let me just encourage you. I love what Pastor Eleanor's doing and Amos, and just setting up this as a rhythm. Keep with it. If you've not done it yet and you're like, hey, I still don't know, I'll be honest with you. I will go calendar to calendar. I think I'm probably one of the busiest people in this room. 100%. I'll just be honest. 8 to 5 job, pastor of a church, 4 kids, like on my HOA board. I am busy, and I had always thought growing up, there's no way I can Sabbath because I can't have that day off in the middle of the week. It just isn't something that I can do. If I can do it and the Ericksons can do it, just about anyone else can do it too. Yeah. It's simply as a matter of priority. We say a lot of time in our life, like, I don't have time for that. We have time for anything we want to have time for. We should simply say, I've chosen not to make that a priority. Yeah. And I would challenge you too in this time, however long you're doing the Sabbath challenge, quit using that language if I don't have time. Just to make that one little change to your language. I remember I did this for one of the times for fasting for 21 days. I said, I'm not going to say I don't have time. I'm only going to say I chose not to make that a priority. And I would even do it for my boss in my other job. When he would say, hey, did you get a chance to write that letter? And I would say, I chose not to make that a priority. And it was amazing. It was amazing how differently I viewed my time. It is something that you can do. You will have to say no to things you want to say yes to. Yep. You may make less money. Yep. You may have relationships and times and things that you want to do that you will have to say no to, but it will be one of the most fulfilling things in your hearts and your soul and your families. It's our job as parents to be there as examples for our kids and to be there and show them how is it that we do this thing that isn't natural for us. Yeah. Sabbathing was something that God wanted his people to be a defining characteristic of themselves. He talked about this in Ezekiel. He said, this is the thing you're known for. Us as Christians in the United States, we're known for a lot of things. Good things, maybe not so good things. But do you think, oh, Christians, you're the people who for like 24 hours choose to do nothing? Is that something that you think we're known for? I don't think so. It's something that I want our church, and I know that I think you guys want this church to be known for. Those are people who unplug and plug in to the God of the universe. And so keep with it. If you haven't started, start it. It's never too late.
Yeah, it's going to be a light to your neighborhood and to your coworkers. And like I said, we've had conversations with teachers now about it because our kids are talking about Shabbat cookies and weird stuff like that.
Nobody's ever said, oh, that's a horrible idea. Everyone's like, I need to do that.
Everyone.
I'm not going to, but that's something I need to do.
Need to.
Do you want to pray us out?
Yeah, I'll pray us out. God of the universe, King of our hearts, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for the gift of Sabbath. God, help us to take advantage of it fully. Help us to learn new rhythms. Inspire us, Lord. Give us new ways to help our spirits to catch up with our bodies, Lord. Thank you for the way that you've designed us to need you, to need rest, to need to contemplate and to gather and to have fellowship and community. God, I pray a blessing over Eleanor and her new baby and Amos. And I pray a blessing over Hope Community Church, Lord. I ask that you would bless each one here this morning, Lord. Give them a fantastic week and weekend. God, and I pray that as next Friday and Saturday comes, as that's usually the Sabbath day, Lord, I pray that you would quicken hearts to get into Sabbath and to get into your rest. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.